This is my first time I've been invited to speak at this conference, so thank you, everybody. It's an honour and a privilege. And let me give you my views as an outsider for just 2 seconds. I cannot believe the doom and gloom that there is in this room, which I've heard this morning. I'm lucky to have worked in the food and, or unlucky depending, in the food and drink industry. How many here have worked in the food and drink industry? I can see 3, 4 hands which go up. When you go and do store visits, which hopefully you will do in Glasgow or back in your own country, don't go and look at newspapers. Don't go and look at magazines. Go and look at beer, at soft drinks, at confectionery, at chilled foods and milk. Categories like those, believe me, they've got a lot more issues than you have. Think about VAT. What products do have VAT and which products do not have VAT? Which products have a product recall? I don't remember a newspaper or a magazine ever having a product recall due to health and safety. Do you have the threat of a fat tax being imposed on your products in the next couple of years? Do you have the threat of your products going dark, being sold behind the counter, or actual plain packaging, like tobacco? Does your products have the threat of minimum pricing, like alcohol, minimum unit pricing? I think the answer to all of those is no, and actually the destiny is entirely in your own hands, and not been suffering from legislation or health and safety. And actually, the problem is, everything I've heard is you're just focusing on your own industry and not taking a look outside of your industry. And so hopefully for the next 12, I know it's quite controversial, sorry, I'm a nice person, but just to make a scene. But I do believe it's important that we get out of our one box and look in another box. I am a huge magazine fan. I subscribe to many travel magazines, you'll be delighted to know, Vivian, many business magazines, commerce magazines. I absolutely adore them. Answer me this one question. If I was to subscribe to a magazine today, why do I wait 6 to 8 weeks for my first issue? Why do I not get the most recent issue delivered by courier tomorrow, and as courtesy, the last 2 or 3 issues just to get me going as well? I simply cannot understand it. That's an industry thing which has to be addressed. Size matters. We've talked about that, I think, in a couple of presentations this morning. I hope you are focusing on the smaller stores, the convenience stores, as much as you should do. In the UK, the growth of the small stores has been growing at twice the rate of supermarkets. So much so that now actually supermarkets are becoming small stores. They have their convenience stores. There's now 2,000, just in the UK alone, almost 2,000 Tesco Express and Sainsbury's local small store format stores. Morrison's, again, a chain which I hope you've heard of, the 4th biggest supermarket chain. We will never enter the convenience market, said a couple of years or so ago. Guess what? 6 months ago, they finally entered the supermarket. It's probably best if companies follow what consumers do rather than the other way around. The other great thing is only in recessions, only the cheaper, only the best value operators will win. In the UK, the 2 operators which have won more than any other have been Waitrose and Sainsbury's, the higher price, the more premium retailers. We also are seeing that there is a growth in Aldi and Lidl in the UK, and something called Poundland, again, I don't know if you heard, is where they talk about everything is £1. A lot of people are going there. Why? Because it's really good value. They're improving their stores. They're introducing food as well as non-food. They're improving their standards, and they're local. But they certainly are not cheap. And this is where reality needs to be put aside and businesses have to focus on the perception. How do consumers and how do shoppers see and view a business rather than the reality? How many people in the UK know how much the Sun newspaper costs because they buy it most days. How many know that because it's price marked? I can tell you 20% of people who buy the Sun newspaper, 2.5 million people, do not know how much it costs. So when people say everyone knows how much everything costs, not true. Go and ask shoppers. Price matching and price transparency, everyone is doing it because there's a recession on it. It's absolutely crucial. There's 45 million adults in the UK. Most people have got access to smartphones. Even more have got access to the internet. Absolutely everybody is comparing prices on these websites to make it easier. Not true. Fewer than 3 million do so. That's okay, because in a recession what we'll do is we'll tolerate a deterioration of service, because it's kind of expected. Companies won't be able to spend quite as much money as they used to, and so we'll kind of understand if they cut corners, if they make things a little bit cheaper. I think this picture, which is a real picture taken in a restaurant where people, consumers, simply will not accept a lowering of standards just because there's a recession on. Actually, the absolute opposite is true. We become more demanding. And so retailers and manufacturers and suppliers have to go even harder, push even harder to make theatre, execution, and excitement in store work. The irony, which I've heard at least 5 times today, the irony that the problem facing the newspaper and magazine industry is purchase frequency. How ironic that actually consumers are visiting more frequently. So it isn't a case of you only getting your fair share, but consumers are visiting less frequently. Consumers are visiting retail outlets more frequently. So your sales should be going up, not down. Importance of community in this big bag world. That there is a box of hope. Nothing more than a cardboard box which a consumer picks up, goes and pays, it costs £1, there's nothing in it. It goes straight back onto the shelf. It's about community, it's about giving back. The recession which we're on was driven primarily by the banks. If even the banks are getting into what are they doing for the community, if even they are doing it, then maybe we should be reflecting, is there more that we can be doing ourselves? £1 and £10 spent in UK high streets is by iPads or phone. And I absolutely loved Ellis's comment this morning. What does that mean? £9 and £10 is not. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's really understand how much of a threat, and let's just focus on what we can do within our stores. Who's seen this? This is actually coming up quite often now in many, many countries. This is a metro station in Korea. This is Tesco Metro. While as you are sat there or stood there waiting for your train to come in, there's a virtual wall of products where people can download using their smartphones and get products delivered. But there's no reason why manufacturers or newspapers or magazine publishers couldn't do something similar using QR codes. There's a huge amount of work going on around incentives. And we talked about promotions, and there's a lot of challenges going on with promotions. Are retailers giving too much away? Well, what's happening now is there's great businesses which are using social media and word of mouth combined to offer incentives. Word of mouth is the most powerful form of marketing. If I recommend you to buy something, then I want something in return from the provider of that services. How can magazines and newspapers do something similar? Look what keeps popping up. They're called pop-up stores. All over the place now in the UK, USA, and many other places. The picture on the left there is a small restaurant overlooking the Eiffel Tower, which only exists for a couple of months a year. Similar on the Thames in London. Or just in festivals or music gigs. How about you? How are you going to get more guerrilla-like to get your products and services out in front of consumers where they are, rather than you continually expecting to go where you are? Find more. This is JCPenney. What kind of product information are you providing? Is there services and tills and units like this which you can be setting up in stores to really start selling your products and magazines and titles? It's about creating theatre. It's about creating fun. There's something which is absolutely crucial now around the world. And that currency is not cash, it's called trust. And things, again, you'll have all heard of it, TripAdvisor or restaurant reviews. We as a nation are increasingly focusing on not reviews from people who write in magazines or newspapers, but we now trust our friends, our colleagues, and everybody else. So experts are increasingly becoming less expert. So what are we doing to really, really embrace some of how consumers are sharing ideas amongst themselves? If you deliver well, the world will find out. If you deliver badly, the world will find out. Consumption, collaborative consumption, a huge now agency set up. So we're moving from a global economy where we want to own things to where we're happy to rent things. We're happy to share. It doesn't have to be brand new. Baby Place, you just rent toys for your kids. You sign up for 12 months and you just take some toys in. After a month, because the kids have got bored with them, you send them back and you get some new ones. And it all's kind of a circle of moving round. Dress vault, ladies, you're going out tomorrow night. Instead of going and buying a brand new one, increasingly women are very happy to share them. Airbnb, you don't want to go to a hotel these days because they're big and corporate. You want to go and take someone's spare bedroom in their homely house. Things like that. Personalisation. In Australia, they launched Coke. Share a Coke with, and then you got to put your friend's name or your name on the Coke. Or this one here, if you're kind of English, you'll understand what that means. It means if you've got a cold, you've got a chest here. Heinz soup. This was to send a soup to someone who had a cold. It was done about a year ago as we're coming towards a winter. So Mary has a cold. I go on. I say, Mary, I want you to have some soup to get well. They print it on and they send it to them. But personalisation is really, really key. Starbucks in the UK, if you tell me your name, you go in on a Tuesday, you tell me your name, you'll get a free latte. And it's all about breaking down the barriers. We want to get to know our customers once again. It's about putting a name to a person and no longer a number. Last couple of slides here just to leave you with. Even boring old bank debit cards. Nowadays, what I can do in the UK is send my favourite photo. This could be a picture of my friend and a dog. That's my favourite photo. I send it to the bank. They then print the photo onto my debit or credit card, and they send it to me. We're breaking down the barriers of what used to be big corporate global organisations. And it's now about what are you going to do for me and how are you going to make it personal for me. Something which is so obvious but so rarely done. Magazines, do you know what the most frequently purchased item with magazines is? If so, how often are those products merchandised next to your magazines? Here we find out that 80% of UK consumers want commonly purchased products merchandised together. In other categories, that might be meal deals. In your category, it might be about solutions bringing relevant products again. Making it easy for the consumer in store. And if it doesn't move in store, will people see it? They're hit by a wall of point of sale. Increasingly, it's got to be technical, and increasingly, it's got to be electronic. It's got to move to create the attention. What are we doing to drive some of these initiatives forward? So that hopefully just gives you a few, hopefully things to inspire you, to certainly make you think about. I want you to get out of the newspaper and magazine industry for just half an hour in the next 3 or 4 days and pretend you work for Coke, Heineken, Mars, PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, and go and look how they do things differently in retail stores. Thank you for your time.